Keith, would you come up with your intern, Steve? Now you're going to notice Keith Simonelli, one of our interns, is here with Steve Berger. Steve Berger already talked, but we had one person in the program who was a survivor because of health reasons, dropped out, and Steve came forward and said, let me do it, because no two students ever come back with the same story, no matter what that story is. So, Keith, tell us about Steve.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Simonelli, and I'd like to thank Dr. Flug and Mr. Steve Berger for sharing his story with me. When I started this program, I didn't expect it to move me in the way that it did. And ever since I was little, I've been going to Sunday school, and I've been helping people. And this internship taught me that you have to be thankful for what you have. And you shouldn't always think about what you don't have or what you need. You should be thankful for what you have already, and you should be thankful that you have a family. When I interviewed Mr. Berger yesterday, I wasn't expecting it to have such an emotional impact that it did. He told me his story. He grew up in a small town in Holland. His father owned a gas station. The Nazis took away the gas station from his father because the Jews weren't allowed to own gas stations. He was sent to a work camp when he was 16, and his sister was 12, and he went with his mother and his father. His father was separated from them. He went to a separate work camp. He was on a train for 3.5 days without food or water, with about 80 to 100 people in a cattle car. And by the time he was up to that point in his story, I was already starting to tear up a little bit. He was at the camp from June of 1944 to April of 1945. His father was separated from them. He worked in a machine shop, and by the time Russia got to Vienna, the camp had everyone had abandoned the camp, and I asked him, how did you leave the camp? And he said, we just walked out, the gates were open. And I was kind of surprised by that, because if it were me, I'd be kind of scared, you know. He was telling me that they were going around killing anyone left in the camps. And so he said he walked to a hotel with his mother and his sister, and he convinced them that they need to keep moving or else they'll be killed. So they got to this hotel, and they found the desk keeper, and he told me that they're in the space where they put mail, the slots where they keep mail. He said that he told his mother and his sister to go in that little space, and he found bits of lumber and old blankets, and he covered them up. And he said we should stay here for now.
Keith, what are you going to remember most about Steve's story? Most important
Oh,
thing.
man.
Yeah, I know it's not an easy question.
At the end of the interview, he was showing me a picture of his 4th grade class, and he pointed out his best friend in the picture. And I asked him, what happened after the war? Did you meet up with your best friend? And he said he went back to his town in the 80s, and he said his friend had a little mechanic shop. And apparently the Germans were using his family as mechanics instead of sending them to the camps. And he said that the Germans took them out of their shop when the Russians were coming in to occupy, and they had them dig their own graves, and they were shot.
Steve, what do you remember most about Keith, or will you remember most?
What was unique about him, when he started to tell me his background, that he said, my grandfather served in the Wehrmacht, in the German army. I said, I never came across a student before whose grandfather served in the German army. So I said, tell me about him.
So you were interviewing him.
Yes.
Yeah, this was
I was very much interested. So he's telling me that his father, his grandfather, served in the German Air Force. And I said, did he ever tell you about the camps? He says, no. He said he never heard about the camps in Germany. I said, that's very odd, because after Kristallnacht, everybody knew in Germany what happened to the Jews. They just not disappeared in the thin air. So it was very hard for me to, but of course, after the war in Germany, if you ask any German about the Holocaust, or he was a Nazi, they said, no, I was never a Nazi. You couldn't find one Nazi in Germany after the war.
Okay. Steve, thank you very much, both of you, okay?